I don't see one on
Okay.
any of the tabs. Okay, there we go. All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the third quarter 2017 Dash Core Team conference call. I'm Ryan Taylor, CEO of the Dash Core Group Inc., and I'll be the main moderator for today's call. The call is being recorded and will be distributed on Dash's YouTube channel shortly. I'm joined on the call by a couple of members of the Dash Core team. That includes Nathan Marley, Evolution Team Lead, and Robert Wyko, our lead project manager for the project. So before we begin, we'll share some additional information about the call format. As in the past, to avoid background noise, all listeners will be on mute for the duration of the call. We'll first share a set of prepared remarks and accompanying slides, followed by a question and answer session. Questions should be submitted in the chat window. And other than the time limit of the call, we won't be restricting the number of questions, but we would like everyone to have an opportunity to ask questions. So we'll limit participants to 2 questions and circle back at the end, time permitting, if you have more than 2. So keep in mind this call is intended as an update on the core team's overall strategy and operations, so questions should ideally reflect that intent. So looking at the agenda, we'll start with an update from Nathan on software development. I'll provide an update on our ongoing business development efforts and progress made during the quarter deploying Dash to new services and our plans to start scaling the business development function. Robert will share updates on our media outreach and some additional details on our path forwards with professionalizing the organization, which is a continuous process. I'll then share details on the core team's financials. That'll include details on our proposal income, expenses, currency gains, as well as a detailed balance sheet. I'll also review our key performance indicators for the quarter and year-on-year comparables. We consider the progress of the Dash Core Group that was achieved in Q3 and the progress of the network overall to be a great success. Our key performance indicators continue to demonstrate progress in growing our ecosystem and our ecosystem's use at a dramatic rate. And the network continued to capture market share from competitors in an increasingly crowded market. From an organization perspective, the core team continued to expand the number of developers dedicated to the project and added a full-time recruiter to actually help maintain and grow the team. Dash also continued its expansion of new business and research partnerships. These included the kickoff of a grant program through our business partner BlockCypher. We touched on that on the last call, which happened during Q3. That's yielded a number of yet-to-be-announced integrations and a pretty full pipeline of high-volume use cases. We also initiated the research that we'd previously funded at Arizona State University's new blockchain laboratory and cultivated additional access in the cannabis industry through a B2B platform called CanTrade. We also introduced new fiat gateways, including CEX.io and WireX in the UK. And importantly, we significantly expanded our relationships in China, including a wallet integration with Bitcan and much more in the pipeline. The statistics on our network continued to strengthen during the quarter as well. Market capitalization expanded 2,991% year on year and was up 89% during the quarter. Our trading volume expanded 6,976% year on year to a record $52 million per day, up from $33 million per day in the previous quarter. Transaction volume increased 11,800% year on year to a record $14.3 billion. And our average hash rate increased 4,700% year on year to a record 31.2 terahashes per second. And as you know, that has continued to grow at a very rapid rate in this quarter. Dash's market share also increased to 1.5% of the overall market. That's up from 1.3% at the end of Q2, and it's up from 0.7% at the end of Q3 last year. So with that background, let's kick off the area-specific updates with Nathan and Robert. So I'll turn the call over to Nathan, who will provide an update on the software development area.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, just a quick introduction. My name is Nathan Marley. I'm the lead developer for Evolution. We had quite a few accomplishments this past quarter. The most recent would be the 12.2 release, which we just released a couple of days ago. That was our first major core release in about 9 months. We, among other things, it lowered the fees 10 times, and we have now introduced 2 megabyte blocks just as soon as that activates in the majority of the network updates. In addition to that, we had our first ever Dash conference in London, and that was very exciting for the developers as well as just everyone in the ecosystem. There was an overall synergy that we did from being together in person, got everyone on the development team really recharged and enthused. And in addition to that, we all the tech leads shut ourselves up in a room and hammered out some final Evolution design specs. We made some changes to simplify, pushed through a few what were at that time remaining hurdles, and we tweaked some final elements of the Evolution design to make it much more robust, as well as enable a quicker MVP delivery. We started and drafted most of the DIPs, which are our technical specifications, currently wrapping those up as we move forward this next quarter. And we had quite a bit of work done on the individual components. Backend components, the DAPI, which is Decentralized API, and the SDK, and we optimizing those internal components and preparing for integrations post Hong Kong meeting, which I'll talk about here in a moment. In addition to that, we've ramped up the team. There are 5 new additions, 3 new developers, 1 DevOps person, and 1 QA engineer. So that's just the major things that we have accomplished this past quarter. Moving forward, next week we've got a workshop in Hong Kong planned for developers, and that's going to be our launch of Evolution development, as well as wrapping up any internal DIPS review. And so we're going to begin the finalization process for that and really get Evolution kicked off there. Our plan is to publish the DIPS tech specifications. We currently have a DIP review workflow that these have to go through before we're ready to release them. So they'll go through 3 different phases, and our plan is to progressively publish these DIP specifications as they become approved and stamped for publication, and in the order that makes sense. So we don't plan on just dumping all of those at once. It'll be a gradual release. As well, we are starting on an internal Evolution masternode build, which integrates all the different components that are involved with Evolution, and that's for our internal testing. We're planning to ramp up the team. We've already started recruitment for certain positions and are going to initiate recruitment post Hong Kong for a few other positions. We're adding backend developers, QA engineers, and UI UX designers. And we're going forward, we're going to change up our development processes a little bit so that the core team and the Evolution team are working more closely together. Up until this last release, we've kind of been working in separate silos, and up until from this point moving forward for V13, all the dev teams for Evolution, we're all going to be integrated and working a lot more closely with each other. So that's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Nathan. So next, I'll cover business development. So last quarter, we achieved several major accomplishments. In my view, the most critical among these accomplishments is the approval we received from Apple to allow application developers to integrate Dash into iOS applications. This was obviously crucial for many aspects of our plans and strategy and expands access and usability for customers. Many use cases, including the pursuit of in-store payments, depended on this approval. And we're pleased that Apple made the decision to add us to what is a very short list of approved digital currencies. This was a long and time-consuming process. End to end, I believe it took well over a year. And it involved many team members navigating various layers of Apple's organization, from their legal team to their App Store team to a variety of security reviews. And so I think that a special thanks is owed to some of those that were more involved in that process. Fernando Phillip and one of our community members, Quantum Explorer, really helped to make that happen. We also launched the grant program with BlockCypher, which we talked about on the previous call. I think the difference today is we now have a better idea of how well that is functioning. Through the program, grants are offered to potential high-volume users of the Dash platform for integrating Dash, and it's especially useful for persuading potential partners to integrate Dash instead of other blockchains, or pushing them over the line from deciding whether or not to do a project. Because many of these partners are large businesses, the time frame for developing a lead into a fully launched service is much longer than typical crypto-oriented businesses like an exchange. That said, our pipeline of projects expanded significantly during the quarter, and a couple of projects have launched, some of them non-public, but we do expect several announcements to result from this partnership over the next few months as those projects wrap up. Our relationship with Alt36 has led to conversations with several B2B platforms in the cannabis industry. So recently, the network funded the integration of CanTrade, which is a B2B ordering platform with over 300 businesses integrated. As more businesses in the industry integrate Dash, we're actually seeing the networking effects of additional interest from other platforms and industry partners. This is because I believe that Dash is getting more traction than any other digital currency for the payments purposes within that industry. So these relatively closed ecosystems are really ideal for establishing a base of significant volume, and discussions are underway with more businesses within the industry, and Alt36 is, of course, out there actively pursuing new business. We've also continued to push the expansion of fiat access in new geographies, and we continue to pick up new fiat pairs in the UK and many countries in Asia as a result of these efforts. Going forward, as you may know, Daniel Diaz has exited his role as Director of Business Development during Q3 due to unforeseen personal reasons. We wish Daniel well and thank him for the progress and incredible insight into the industry dynamics that he provided during the last 2 years. He was one of the first volunteers to quit their jobs actually to work for Dash full time, and we simply wouldn't be where we are today without him. as soon as Daniel determined he would be unable to return to the team, we initiated a search for a new lead. In the current environment, businesses are increasingly open to integrating digital currency and, importantly, coins other than Bitcoin. Inbound activity has picked up substantially recently, and our outbound efforts are more productive than in the past. And so consequently, we think now is the right time to begin expanding the business development team with a presence in key markets around the world. So we should have a new business development lead announced in the next few weeks. We've been interviewing for quite some time and seeing some incredible candidates for this position, and we'll start expanding that team from there. Fiat access remains a focus for us, especially when it comes to building new capabilities. We signed agreements with a number of new partners that will expand Fiat access, and many of these will be announced by the end of the quarter. One of the most critical here is having free bank transfer brokerage service in major markets. This is an area that we have really focused on to make it as easy as possible for people to sign up, transfer funds, and buy Dash without knowing how to trade. So we will soon be adding a number of new capabilities to the network as well. This includes a new in-store purchase application that will allow users to shop at two of the world's largest retailers at a discount, new payment processors, and new phone top-up services, all of which are going through the business development process right now. Many of these payments-oriented businesses are being priced out of continued use of Bitcoin, and they're very eager to work with Dash to increase their margins, reduce transaction costs, and provide an overall better user experience with faster transaction times. In summary, on the business development front, business development activity has been accelerating, and we're shifting more and more from strictly being focused on fiat gateways towards focusing on the greater success that we're seeing integrating useful services on the network. And so I think you'll continue to see that the mix of the type of projects that we see come through the business development pipeline will be more and more on the usability aspects. So, Robert, will you take us through marketing and communications and project organization sections?
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Robert Więcko. I'm project manager in Dash, and I will cover marketing, communication, and project organization topics at the moment. From our perspective, Q3 was very fruitful, especially from PR perspective. We have continued our partnership and relationship with Waxman PR, the agency that supports us with PR efforts. We have also hired new marketing agency to drive our marketing campaign and also rebranding efforts. Ogilvy will be helping us and launching a campaign during Q4. Probably also it will have a large influence on our, let's say, view outside, like on web pages, logos, and the other outlets we have. During Q3, we have participated a large number of conferences. Of course, we had a conference, that first Dash conference in London, which was a great success of all of the community members, team members, master node owners, and gave us completely different view on what Dash is and where are we going. It was a great effort and a great experience from my perspective. We have participated in large non-crypto conferences like Money 2020 and a large number of conferences in crypto space. especially in Europe, when we have participated like around 10 events in Q3. So it was a great quarter from this perspective. Of course, we were working on publications, wiki updates, article. This quarter was amazing from PR perspective because according to the numbers provided by our PR agency, we have more than 8,000 articles being published on different media channels with more than 9 billion views on them. I don't know how to validate these numbers, but the software that is been using by Waxman PR is giving us these numbers, and they are simply amazing. So we are very happy with the results of their work. We are very happy with the picture and view and the large audience we reached during Q3, and we want to definitely continue in this direction. That's why we are extending the contract with Waxman PR for another quarter, and we'll continue the direction into the Asian and European markets with PR expansion. We are going to support or our development efforts by marketing, with Ogilvy being a driver of marketing campaign. And also we will continue our daily news and updates on our pages, Facebook, forums, and other social media channels. We are planning also to continue our increased focus on Europe and Asia in terms of publications and conference participation, because from our perspective, the coverage in the United States is very good. What we need to increase is definitely Asian and European market and further other parts of the world. With this, I will switch to project organization efforts and achievements. Achievements from third quarter. We have been working on the legal entities setup, and the legal structure is finally well planned and being worked on by the lawyers. Ryan will provide more details about this part of our work later on in the section after finances. We have had very good results in terms of recruitment. We have hired new recruiter and also new team members in different areas of our activities. And also, especially for project organization, we have hired two new full-time PMs who are supporting core delivery and evolution efforts of our developer. With the entire project management team, we work on new delivery model for the entire team to synchronize, standardize, and make it more flexible and understandable for everyone to understand, join the team, and develop the software. What is also worth to mention are our Dash Labs in Hong Kong, new initiative of Evan Duffield. And I hope Evan will be able to provide some insight very soon about the activities being made, what he's achieving there. I may say that he works extensively in different areas. Of course, as usually by Evan, it's very creative work, but he's also focusing himself on the hardware needed in the future in our network for our project. In Q4, we are going to finalize the setup of legal entities for the Dashcore group and for the network itself. We are going to continue our support for development teams and to implement and finalize delivery model, gather feedback, apply improvements, so everyone can work the same way. and also this improves a communication. That is something that was reported by the community members, that the communication during Q3 was maybe not perfect, and the part of the delivery model setup will have a strong reporting section. I hope this will meet the needs of our community and masternode owners in terms of better reporting, better communication. We will continue our recruitment efforts. We have defined a number of job descriptions with the new roles needed by organization. We will continue interviews for technical and non-technical functions. We are going to expand our management structure in order to provide support for our development teams. And what is last but not least, we are working on the standard operating procedures for the entire team that should simplify the work of everyone within the team and will give a much clearer picture of the areas of responsibility and how the work should be done within Dashcore Group. With this, I think, Ryan, I will hand it over to you to continue on project finances. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Robert. At this point, I'll walk you through some of our key performance indicators to start from this quarter, as well as our financial statements. In terms of Dash's financial KPIs, Dash's market cap continued to grow rapidly in Q3. There were about 7.6 million coins at the end of Q3. This is up 12.1% from the previous year. Our price was up 84% from the previous quarter, finishing the quarter at 331.01. Dash's market cap increased 89% quarter on quarter and 2,659% year on year. Dash's market cap, we exited the quarter claiming 1.54% of the digital currency market space. That's an increase from 1.33% the previous quarter. Daily price volatility decreased to 5.2%, which for the first time, and this is an important milestone in my mind, was actually lower than that of Bitcoin. And that trend is continuing again in the current quarter, with Dash volatility being lower than Bitcoin, which is quite remarkable considering our size relative to the Bitcoin market. On a relative basis, we should be more volatile. I think it owes a lot to our masternode system that provides stability at much lower scale. The other thing that's happening that I think is influencing this is that a greater percentage of our trading volume is directly in fiat. The proportion that used to be in fiat was much lower up until the last couple of quarters, and that's been a dramatic shift. And this helps to decouple Dash from the rest of the cryptocurrency market and the rest of the altcoin market. I'm hopeful that that trend will continue over time. Exchange trading volume continued to grow for the 7th consecutive quarter to a new record $52 million per trading day. That's up 59% over the previous quarter and 6,976% year on year. On the next slide, we're also breaking fresh records across a number of other KPIs. This includes the number of active addresses, the number of transactions, transaction volume, network hash rate, and our social media metrics continue to climb as well, all indicating growth for the Dash network. We saw a slight decline in the number of non-masternode full nodes during the quarter, though we suspect this is due to the adoption of some new lightweight wallet options that were released in Q2 and Q3, This includes the Dash Masternode tool and our iOS wallets. And we believe that's the case rather than a true reduction in users given all of the other metrics are increasing. So looking at the same information graphically really helps illustrate the dramatic growth. If you could switch to the graphic slide. It really helps illustrate the dramatic growth our network is currently undergoing. The absolute growth rate is actually accelerating, as you can see in the steepening lines of these charts. And it's pretty astonishing that the steepness and extent to which these lines have extended from Q4 of 2016. Moving on to our financials, starting with the income statement, note that we conduct all of our accounting in US dollars to provide a more stable picture of our financials. The core team received a total of $861,000 in payments from Dash's proposal system during the third quarter. And although expenses exceeded $1.7 million, we benefited from Dash's valuation increase during the quarter, which bolstered our income by an additional $1.8 million in currency gains. As with past financial statements, you'll notice that there are categories called uncategorized income and uncategorized expense. Because our accounting package can't support currency conversions other than those involving the US dollar, this is a workaround that's needed to facilitate any conversion of Dash to Bitcoin, which is often needed to pay some of our expenses. Uncategorized expense represents the sale of Dash, and uncategorized income represents Bitcoin purchases. They're not true income and expense items, so take that into account. In most cases, due to the price increase, our budget balances have been so well funded that we haven't drawn additional funding for most budgets throughout the quarter. I'll comment more on that on the next slide and walk you through those areas that we basically relied on existing savings. Our largest expense during the quarter was promotional. This line item includes mainly business development and conference expenses, and was higher than our labor costs for the first time, which is really indicative of the shift that we're undergoing towards more and more share of our funding going into direct investments into our ecosystem rather than having to cover payroll. The main cost in this category included the funding of business development efforts in China and the payouts associated with the Alt36 escrowed funding. These were there was a payment received for Alt36. Dash core team is escrowing the funds and then releasing those to Alt36 upon the completion of milestones. Another major expense was an integration through BlockCypher of a large US-based publicly traded company that's yet to be announced. The bulk of the remaining line items included conference expenses for cryptocurrency conferences in Kiev and Stockholm, the trading show in New York, and Money 2020 in Las Vegas. Excuse me. Our next largest expense line item during the quarter was for labor, which consists of all the resources working on the project. The largest component of this is obviously developers. We continued expanding the number of full-time resources during the quarter, though at a less frenzied pace. And this line item includes our translators, developers, and administrative staff. Pardon me. Legal and professional fees were also higher this cycle. These costs included the drafting of legal contracts and other legal services, our public relations services, and HR recruitment services. But by far the largest expense in this category, and the reason for the elevated expense, was for professional event management for the Dash conference in London, which was entirely outsourced to Keynote Events. The details on that proposal were posted to the network. Moving to the balance sheet, we again saw significant increases during the quarter of nearly $1 million. As reported on the income statement, all of the gains were attributable to currency gains. Because of the currency gains, there were no requests from Dash Core Group for funding during the quarter for all budget categories except for conferences and travel, and a research grant that was provided to Arizona State University. This includes no proposals put up for the Dash Core Group salaries, anything for any of these other categories. So we now boast a $3.5 million balance sheet with a significant buffer against future price movements in almost all budget categories at this point. And we'll continue to draw down existing budgets as appropriate in each of these categories to pay for our expenses until additional funding is needed. So this helps free up funding for other areas of the project for third parties to come in and provide services. So you can see here that there's a significant amount of funding across a number of different categories at this point. So in summary, kind of where we're at today, the Dash Network and Dash Core Group are currently positioned extremely well to continue pursuing our strategy. On the business side, our network of partners continues to grow and strengthen, and activity is noticeably increasing not only within the cryptocurrency sphere, but into mainstream use cases for both B2B and consumer business. We're also seeing formerly dismissive organizations within the cryptocurrency space warm up to Dash's offerings, primarily because of the combination of governance and related stability issues and the lack of scaling that really make the Dash network a good solution to these issues that these businesses in the sector are facing. Within the past 3 months, there's been what I can only call a dramatic shift in the attitudes of major services in the Bitcoin space. I'd say that Bitcoin maximalism is clearly out of fashion, if not dead, and there's genuine interest in our solutions from what were previously very dismissive organizations. Concerning team growth, and as discussed on the last call, we've turned our attention to expanding the non-development areas of the team, including adding positions in project management, quality assurance, infrastructure, marketing, and business development. As promised on the last call, we're increasing our focus on marketing. In the quarter, we contracted with Ogilvy and Mather, as most of you know, one of the leading global firms, to conduct a rebranding and initial marketing campaign that'll launch before the end of the year. And we also made progress on the legal structure since the last call, despite a set of challenges the trust lawyers have never encountered before. A lot of research is required to keep this thing moving forward. Dash is literally writing a new chapter in how an ownership-like structure can work in an anonymous fashion strictly through a relationship defined by a network protocol. So coming out of the Dash conference in Munning 2020, we have a voluminous set of business development opportunities in the pipeline that will keep us very busy for the next few months, and I anticipate great new partnerships to solidify in the near future that will ensure the network's continued expansion. And I'll conclude with some comments about the state of the industry overall and what I'm seeing in the conversations I have with other CEOs in the industry. Overall, there's a growing sentiment among decision makers that Bitcoin is unlikely to continue dominating the market to the extent that it has historically. As businesses are feeling the impact from blockchain forks, high fees, and unpredictable transaction times, the recognition is growing that better solutions are needed. It is this very tangible damage that is finally causing a more honest assessment of their choice of blockchains. In the general payments industry, there's a growing recognition that digital currency is not for illicit activities and that genuine benefits are achievable that can lower costs, increase the speed of payments, and pursue entirely new business models as a result of digital currency. For the first time this year, literally everyone at Money 2020 knew about digital currencies, and they were no longer dismissive. I believe that conditions are improving for much broader adoption of digital currency, and Dash is better positioned than other projects to actively take advantage of this changing attitude. I look forward to updating everyone on the progress we make in the remainder of the year on our next quarterly call. Before we conclude, we did want to make some comments on the legal structure. I believe we have one slide on that. We did talk about this pretty extensively on the last call, so I won't go into a great deal of detail other than to provide an overview once again of what it is that we're setting up. The impetus for this was we really wanted to provide the network new options and new methods of accountability over the work that we do. This was undertaken voluntarily in order to help strengthen our governance system in a non-coding way. Really the idea is that Dash Core Group Inc. is here to serve the needs of the network. We're unlike many other vendors to the network or potential business partners that may be interested in serving their own interests. We're making an explicit statement here that we are a service organization that is dedicated to the growth of the Dash ecosystem and not to the growth of our own enterprise. And the best way to do that is to basically set up a structure that is, for all intensive purposes, owned by the network itself. And so we've really challenged the lawyers with this one, given that we don't know who owns the Dash network. The best means to do that is through a trust, with the trust naming as beneficiaries our masternode owners. Our operating company is issuing shares to that trust. I would say we're in the final stages at this point with the trustee, with the lawyers in New Zealand that are actually setting up the legal documents. They are encountering things that have never been encountered before with this structure. And so it is taking a bit longer, but we want to make sure that it's done right. And so I think that it'll finally happen this month, that we'll be able to make a formal announcement about what the structure is and the legal entities that were set up, exactly how they work together. We're kind of inventing some of this as we go along. But the intent, of course, is ultimately, should the Dash Core Group, ever become compromised or become non-responsive to the needs of the network, if it so chooses to defund us or make other changes, the network itself would not lose on the assets that we've accumulated there on the balance sheet that I shared earlier. And the entire team would not need to be scrapped, but rather leadership. There would be a mechanism for leadership to be replaced and retain the benefit of the structure and the employees we've attracted and so on, and redeploy those for the good of the network. It also prevents any of us from acting in bad faith, paying ourselves an exorbitant bonus on our way out the door, basically because the shareholder would be the trust would have the right to enforce legally against any type of action like that. And so we just view this as an improvement to the existing governance structure that we can put in place on top of the core team. I imagine that as other organizations might grow to serve the Dash network, they could use this as a model to basically issue their shares to the network. And so I think there's a lot of potential benefit here in terms of reducing risk for the network and in terms of providing new ways for the network to engage with businesses, for example. This could serve as a model for a business who wants to issue a portion of their shares and portion of their profits to the network in exchange for investments. So I think it opens up entirely new use cases for the budgeting system, and we'll continue to look at ways that we can optimize the way that we operate for the betterment of the network. Robert, do you have anything to add on this?
No, I think you have covered everything quite clearly.
Okay.
Maybe if you define the way how masternode network can influence trust, and then trust can control Dash Group in some simple terms, would be also useful to understand how this control is happening.
Yeah, and I'm sure this would have come up in Q&A anyway. So basically, Dash Core Group Inc. is a Delaware corporation. Its shares are to be issued to the trust, and so the trust would be the effective owner over Dash Core Group Inc. The primary mechanism that the network has over Dash Core Group Inc. remains through the network, remains through the funding system, and has the ability to approve or disapprove of the expenses that we propose to the network. That will be very frequent every single month, and provides much more granularity in terms of the control. At any time, the network could put up a proposal to explicitly defund the Dash Core Group. That effectively means we're asking the trustee, who is a representative of the masternode network, to replace the board, because the defunding, the explicit defunding vote would allow them to come in and wholesale replace the board or piecemeal pick out the individuals that are causing the disruption. It retains Dash Core Group as a legal entity and a functioning business that is serving the needs. All of the assets would transfer to the new leadership team, by law, and the trustee would have the ability to enforce those terms. And so effectively, it is a means by which I've called it in the past the nuclear option, where if you defund the core team and the core team owns its own shares or is operated as a partnership, it would allow legally for the team to walk away with millions of dollars that really belong to the network, in my mind. It would also put the network in a very difficult situation if they had to fire the main team and create a whole new one. It takes months, if not years, to build a team of our size and have it function in any effective means. It takes time to build processes, build relationships within the team, work out operating models and everything. It would be a huge burden and cost for the network to undergo such a change if it meant blowing up the whole core team. This provides a much more nuanced way to come in, basically seize those assets back, and put in a more effective management team that can fix any issues that Dash Core Group is facing. And so we're doing this basically to improve the sustainability of the Dash Core Group as an entity, fully recognizing that it puts my own role at risk if I were to fail the network or were to fail to achieve expectations, and it's true of all the other board members. So we're doing this voluntarily because it's just plain the right thing to do, and we spent a great deal of time thinking about the best ways to implement this without putting the network at risk.
That was great.
So
thank you, Ryan.
So this concludes the prepared portion of the call. So we'd like to begin the question and answer session. I'll turn it over to Robert, who, as always, will kind of walk us through the process that will follow for the Q&A session, and then he'll start reading some of the questions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ryan. So we are starting the Q&A session. We will start from the questions being submitted to the forum. Due to the large number of questions, we have decided to limit the number of them for each of users to 2 questions. I will be reading one question after another, and different team members will be providing answers. Feel free to type your questions on the chat window. I will cover them after the questions from the forum. So let's start from question from Alex Rowe. What is going on with business development of Dash? Is Daniel Diaz still active in this area, and what are the team's plans in this direction?
Yeah, so we partially covered this one already during the business development section, but I'll comment on it a little bit further. I think the situation with Daniel was unfortunate in the sense that there was a lot of uncertainty as to whether or not he would be able to return to the team, and that kind of delayed our ability to kind of react to it as we, decided whether or not to give it more time or to start a search. Ultimately, we of course decided to start a search late in the quarter. In the meantime, so Daniel was the key person on business development, but was certainly not the only person performing business development at any time. We have a person who is part-time, Matthew Meek, who's been involved in business development. I play a significant role in business development on an ongoing basis, as you can imagine. Others have stepped up on the team to manage certain relationships. Fernando has been managing a couple of relationships. Even Perry Wooden from Node 40, he's an advisor to the project. He's stepped up and handled some of the workload there. So business development continued during the quarter, and Daniel is still hopeful that he can return to the team in the near term. It won't be in the same leadership role within the business development area, but he's expressed an interest in continuing to work for the project when he's ready and able. And in the meantime, we're of course moving forward full steam with getting a new person in there and then expanding that team, having that person build out several business development people to start.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Another question. What is going on with Evan Duffield? Is he working on his scalability project, and what is happening there?
Well, Robert, you spoke about this one already.
Yeah, I covered this already. So Evan moved to Hong Kong to focus on Dash Labs and scalability project exactly. And what is happening there, I hope that soon Evan will join us in one of our calls and cover this topic in more details or will post on the forum what is happening in Dash Labs. For now, well, he is very involved in this project, and scalability project is definitely his focus.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit of color here. I do have a meeting with one of his team members next week. So unfortunately, I don't have a current update here, but the early focus that they're concentrating on is shifting some of the workload from the CPU to GPUs for the masternodes to validate transactions and so forth. If the masternodes are able to offload that workload to parallel processors like the GPUs are very good at, it can have the same effect that GPUs have in the mining space, really accelerating the speed at which blocks can be verified and then propagated to the rest of the network. And it's that speed that is critical to a high performance network. So they're focused on that. They're also exploring the hardware aspects, but I think to a much lesser extent. And I think that Evan will set up his own communication with the community as his project progresses. As everybody is probably aware, he has not come back to the network for funding at this point. This is kind of his own project that he's pursuing. And so I think that communication from him will be on, when he's ready to communicate his progress to the community.
Yep. Thank you, Brian. Another two questions from Stalt923. Understand we have growing pains, but how can Core provide consistent and professional standard of communications and be accountable to the community that the standard and move a multi-billion-dollar business should? A large number of long-timers and masternodes are continuously frustrated at the lack of communication and wrong expectations being set. What will Core do to ensure this gap can be solved? Maybe I will start. If you want to add something, Ryan, feel free to jump in. So I think that our communication is quite good. Comparing to the other projects in the industry, we are having very good communications. I have to admit that last quarter was not the best quarter from the communication perspective, mainly due to my private, let's say, workload and focus on conferences and increasing focus on Europe in general. However, we are providing on regular basis the reporting, monthly reporting, and our quarterly calls are covering all of the areas necessary to understand what we are doing, how are we progressing, what is our focus. And I think that we will continue this direction. In order to improve the communication, I'm setting up the delivery model that will provide us automatic reporting from the project, so community is more aware about each project progress. Also, the portfolio report will be provided on monthly basis when the tools are fully set up, which should happen after the Hong Kong workshop. And this way, we will provide you with much more detailed information about the progress. And I hope this will satisfy those who are looking for more granularity and for more information about the development, especially. Ryan, do you want to add something?
Sure. I think we've recognized that there is an ongoing and continuous need for more communication. I think when the Dash Core Group gets the most busy is the time when there is less capacity for communicating, and so it's a bit of a catch-22. One of the things that we're doing is we've had internal discussions about the need for communication, expanding communication capacity, and there will be roles put up for that in the future that will really focus on that. We're also changing some of our internal reporting that'll make it easier for us to extend that to external reporting. and so we're aware of the issue. We're prioritizing it. There are some other roles that are probably still higher priority, and that's not to say that we can't work on them in parallel, but it does kind of, we've got a certain cadence that we can bring people into the organization. I would say that this is a medium urgency, and so I would expect some movement on in the next couple of months. Certainly by early next year, I would expect the communication to significantly improve and become more standard. Okay. We will continue to do things like these quarterly calls, of course, which I think are very helpful for in-depth interviews or in-depth communication on what's going on with the project.
Thanks, Ryan. Next question: what is the actual number of full-time versus part-time developers working on DashCore versus Evolution?
So I think that there is pretty good delineation right now between DashCore versus Evolution in terms of the development staff. I believe we have around 6 full-time developers on DashCore, as well as some part-timers that are more in the category of volunteers that are offering their services for individual smaller projects. In terms of the Evolution side, we've got significantly more resources devoted there. I would say at least 9 to 12 I would consider almost exclusively working on Evolution, and in addition, we've got some engineers, some DevOps people that are also working within those areas, as well as people that are pseudo development oriented, like quality assurance, that are embedded within those teams. So it really depends on your definition of what a developer is or someone working on development. But the overall team is around 23 people at this point, excluding project management and QA. You've got some other functions in there like the mobile wallets that are being supported. So, call it roughly 2/3 are on the Evolution side, 1/3 are on the DashCore side, and we've got around 23 contributors within development, and another probably 7 or 8 in those other functions.
Thank you, Ryan.
I think in the future it will be even harder to delineate, by the way, between these groups, because going forward with 12.2 in the rearview mirror at this point, and 12.3, the main focus going forward, there's going to be a lot more bleed over between the different areas, people that will be working across areas and helping coordinate the activities between those two groups. So, I think it'll be harder for me to give concrete numbers in the future, but I think that should give you a rough idea of how things are split today.
Yes, definitely. As per our planning after Hong Kong, that there will be no split between core and Evolution teams. This will be one team working on one product, and there will be a distinction maybe between one product, Dash Evolution, and on the other applications and products like integrations, Android, iOS, wallets, and so on and so forth.
Yep.
Another portion of questions from Iluanax. I don't know how to pronounce it, sorry. Other projects in the space today are springing up, labeling themselves as competition to PayPal. Such example is Utrust. How does Dash view the projects coming up in this space, and is there any plans of cross-integration collaboration with projects?
Yeah, I mean, there are some distinctions with some of the projects that are coming out. A lot of them is in the fact that I think that a lot of these, that are touting themselves as competitors to PayPal are not taking into account the platform aspects of this and what this means for the merchants. They're more talking about graphical user interface and abstracting away the addresses, which is only one small aspect of what we're doing. This project is so much larger than that and incorporates so much more functionality, especially on the merchant side. So I don't think there's a direct comparison with them. I don't think these projects have a deep understanding of what it takes to get adoption. And to be frank, I wouldn't seek integration or collaboration with projects that don't have much of an established product. When at this point, I consider the field open for us to be able to partner with large existing financial players with significant number of customers and merchants. And so I think that the opportunity is much bigger with established players, and I would tend to focus there in order to help us scale. To the extent that we're signing partnerships, they should really move our ecosystem forward, not theirs. And we've got, a significant number of users. We believe hundreds of thousands around the world at this point, just given the volume of traffic that we see to sites like Dashforce News and our own website, seeing many thousands of unique visitors a day. I think it's very clear that we have a very large ecosystem of users at this point. So I think that we're leagues ahead of where those projects are. It takes a lot of time to build a user base like we have, and a lot of time to build relationships within the space. And I wouldn't expect those other projects to be having the type of conversations that we're having today anytime soon.
Thanks. Another question. What's the status on the BlockCypher Dash grant program?
Yeah, so I think we provided a pretty good update there. I had a call with BlockCypher earlier this week just to go over the opportunities that we have in the pipeline, and I wrote them down in a notebook. And when I found myself on page 3, it's very clear that this is having a significant impact. There is just a ton of activity that is happening through BlockCypher. They are oftentimes, they have services that are needed by potential business partners that we're in initial contact with, and we introduce them to BlockCypher to say, hey, they need your API that does X or Y, or they need a specific application built that I think BlockCypher would be good for. It's really helping us to close deals, because a lot of times these businesses are looking to outsource certain functions, and having BlockCypher to point to say those functions already exist, it's just one less barrier for us to onboard a potential business. So the BlockCypher grant program is actively putting businesses over the line. I'm aware of several instances in which Dash was selected over Litecoin specifically because of the grant program, as well as our other unique attributes like Instant Send. But I think that it's making a real difference and gives the Dash network real access. And I'll also say that the businesses that interact with BlockCypher are of a much different caliber. They tend to be businesses that are going to drive significant volume than, say, a startup type. And the people that they take the information very differently when it comes from BlockCypher versus from us. When it comes from us on the benefits of our network, it comes off as salesy. And of course, we're going to say the things that are good about our network, but when BlockCypher comes in as an expert and they view as a neutral third party and is telling them the advantages of Dash over their other options and telling them, don't use Bitcoin for that for the following reasons, Dash is a much better fit for you, they listen. And so it really adds to our credibility within the space. And I think anyone that's seen the list of BlockCypher's clients knows that this is significant within the cryptocurrency space, and BlockCypher is actively pushing digital currency out into non-crypto industries at this point. And so I think that we are benefiting immensely from this relationship. I think BlockCypher is benefiting immensely from this relationship. We're helping them close business. So it's a very symbiotic relationship.
Thank you, Ryan. Another question from Iñaki. Is there any adoption strategy, and if was it for the Asian market?
What is it for the Asian market? So, yeah, I mean, clearly we need to focus on fiat access in Asia first. I don't think that you can expect much end user adoption if you don't have fiat access. So we're very focused on that. We're in conversations with many of the leading exchanges at this point. I know that this week one of those became quite public. BitCan is another example of a partnership that we've developed there. The team in China is doing a great job. Philip is doing a great job at, building those relationships. BitCan recently launched Dash into its wallet and is actively communicating to its users about the benefit of Dash. So I think that we're making real inroads there. Nothing happens overnight in China. There's usually a longer relationship building period. I am going to be jumping on a plane in the very near future to meet with some folks in person, and we're going to continue to make inroads there. And I think that Asia is a key market for obvious reasons. It's a large market. It's very open to cryptocurrency as far as the users go. Obviously, the government has been a challenge there, but a lot of these businesses are finding ways to adapt and move outside of the country for their operations. So I think it'll continue to be a key market, and we're going to put the appropriate focus on it to see Dash adopted there over the long term.
Next question is from Solar Guy. If we complete and begin to use the legal entity for Dash and the masternodes in Switzerland, will that change our status with regard to the Howey test? I'm sure you have considered this. I just want a little hand-holding and assurance that we do not need and we will get SEC role into bed with us.
Yeah, so nothing changes in terms of the portions of the Howey test that we fail. This is simply providing masternodes as beneficiaries, which anyone is free to set up and do. If I were to create a new company, fund it with my own money, and try to have the benefits from that emanating from that company in terms of profits or something else issued to a trust and disseminated to any group of people, I'm free to do so. I don't think that there's anything about this that would set this up as a security suddenly because we've set up a trust with beneficiaries. We are validating our status with the SEC with additional lawyers that specialize in this area, and I think that we'll get even more clarity in the future on this. There are working groups from cryptocurrency that are in communications with the SEC. I'm trying to stay close to them to make sure that I'm aware of any issues that might be on the horizon, but I personally don't see a reason to be concerned. Our lawyers don't see a reason to be concerned. And so I think we're in pretty good shape on that one. But we're not. I mean, we're not going to stop looking at it. We're going to make sure that anything that we do doesn't put the network in any type of jeopardy.
Do we have Keyman insurance? This has two versions. The literal version is that a business or group can purchase life disability insurance on specific team members, such that if this key member were to die or become disabled, the group gets a substantial amount of money to hire a very high caliber replacement on an emergency basis. And the second version suggested basically is to have a plan in place to compensate for the sudden unplanned loss of a critical team member for any reason. Do we have such a plan? How many people on core are critical for timely progress and would be difficult to replace, which could set the whole project back significantly?
Yeah, so this is a challenge that I think a lot of businesses face, and us as an operating entity, I don't think can escape that fact. I mean, on the good news front, Dash is more decentralized than, say, a corporation, in the sense that we have multiple entities that serve its purpose. But obviously, the Dash Core Group is very central to that. That said, I think all corporations that have leadership that, for whatever reason, whether it's perceived or real, the market feels are critical to the success, and that person dies or becomes disabled or something happens, there isn't really a remedy for investors typically. There may be funding, as he pointed out, for emergency hiring of someone new. I don't think the Dash network would face the risk of being able to afford somebody great. At this point, there's millions of dollars in funding every single month, and this is a very exciting project to be a part of. It is literally the type that can change the world, and so I think that you would find a plethora of good options for any of the senior roles here at Dash, and we're actually finding that as critical team members do leave over time, and we bring in replacements, we're able to attract some of the best and are finding incredibly high caliber talent. So I don't view it as a significant risk in that regard. That said, I think that we need to do more for succession planning, and I've raised this with Kelly, our director of HR, and she has put forward an initial plan on how succession planning process can and should work. She's got a lot of experience in this area, so we'll be working on that to make sure that there's much better succession planning, so that when something happens, like what happened with Daniel, unforeseen events, causing him to be unable to perform his function, we should have a backup in place that is groomed for that position and is able to quickly take the reins over and keep things moving forward. And that will be much more possible when we have a larger team within each of these areas. So as we scale infrastructure, as we scale business development, I think that the continuity that we'll be able to put in place there will be better and better. And we have explicit aims to do that. So, I mean, there's a lot that we can do to minimize risk. I think that you can't escape all risk. At the end of the day, these are human-led endeavors to coordinate all of this and make it happen. And there are going to be dependencies on roles and individual skills and things like that. I would say that there are quite a number of critical roles within the team to varying degrees, and succession planning can help alleviate those risks. So we'll pursue that.
Thank you, Ryan. Very good questions, very good answers. Another two from Patrice Gauher. How is Dash going to attract merchants to adapt the currency? Very general question.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been pretty transparent about this, so I won't spend a great deal of time on this. But obviously, one of the better means of reaching scale quickly is working with other partners that have relationships with the merchants. So whether that is working with the point of sale provider that is established within an industry, such as the route that Alt36 is taking, you get hundreds of merchants at once through these integration partnerships. So let's just take a few examples. Alt36 is integrating into the 3 largest point of sale providers in the cannabis industry, and that will be actively marketed to the many thousands of dispensaries across the country at once through those channels. And these are coming from organizations, that sales push is coming from organizations that those businesses already have an established relationship with. And so it really opens doors versus a cold call from someone you've never heard of before. The other aspect of this is, they're bringing in the business-to-business platform. So CanTrade is adopting Dash as the payment method on its ordering platform, and they already have 320 merchants on their platform. And so we're getting hundreds of merchants at once. Trying to sell Dash one merchant at a time from a business development team owned and controlled by Dash it's very difficult to scale to that. It's very difficult to get access to mind share from the merchants themselves when we're coming to them fresh and new as a new entity versus going through a partner they're already working with. And so I think if we're going to grow quickly and get to scale quickly, we're going to be dependent on these types of relationships. Another example of this is BlockCypher. We built one relationship with BlockCypher, and BlockCypher opens the door to dozens and dozens of potential opportunities for us that we don't even need to take the lead on doing the integration and closing. And so through one integration with BlockCypher, we're able to scale to a lot of significant merchants and B2B opportunities and things that we otherwise simply wouldn't be able to get to. And scaling a business development team is tough. It can take a long time to grow to, you'd need a sales force of thousands to be able to go out and blanket all of these merchant opportunities. So I think the path is going to be through these channel partners that we can integrate with and gain massive scale quickly. So that's kind of the very high level what the strategy is. And of course, there's sub-strategies within different opportunities, whether you're talking about money remittance or consumer acceptance, B2B payments within a closed ecosystem. There's many different types of opportunities, and there's different strategies for each. So there's no easy way to answer this question succinctly.
Yep, thanks. What would be the advantages of these merchants to work with Dash as opposed to our universal payment converter such as UTrust, which would allow clients to pay in whatever currency they want and merchants to receive fiat?
There are advantages to working with Dash directly or exclusively. They can relate to the incentives that we can provide to them. Either to be an exclusive partner or to, basically offset their costs or provide co-marketing or provide PR or social media access to our own social media channels that Dash users follow. So there's a lot of reasons why they might look to the Dash network. And of course, with Evolution, the goal is to, by setting up a platform as opposed to just a network, is that creating an app within the Dash ecosystem, within the Evolution wallet, will enable them to access new customers. If they were to simply integrate with a universal payment converter, they don't get that app that's sitting front and center in front of the Dash user base. And so there's a real incentive there to go the extra mile. I don't think anything precludes them from accepting Dash through both channels, but to actually build something specific for the Dash network, you get much better access to the users, and the users get much easier access to the merchants. And so I think there's real benefit there for them to focus a portion of their efforts on explicitly providing something for Dash. And that's, I think, what really differentiates us. We're, of course, going to continue to try to work with payment gateways and other means by which merchants accept payments, because the more places we can get Dash accepted, the better.
Thanks, Ryan. From Tante Stefana, when will Dash begin the marketing plan and what will it look like? So I guess we have, that one? Yeah, I guess we have already started the marketing plan by hiring a large market player. The Ogilvy agency is one of the biggest marketing companies in the world, and they have already started work on our marketing campaign, and soon the first testing campaigns will be launched in a couple of selected countries. So yeah, it's happening. Marketing plan is done, and the work started.
I can step here for a bit if you want. Ogilvy is working.
This is Fernando, by the way, Fernando Gutierrez from the core team. Speaking. Yeah.
So Ogilvy is working a rebranding project. There's to this one more intellectual, how we want to position the Dash brand in the market, and there is a second part that will be around visual identity. So we get a new identity card one. The current identity and logo and all that stuff came from a $3 contest a couple of years ago. So it's about time to renew it and do it more professionally. And in parallel to that, we have started to work on a framework to do some online advertising to try to increase awareness around Dash. We've already done also some market research. What we have discovered is not very different from what we already all have the intuition, and is that Dash is not that well into the cryptocurrency space. So we'll focus on first making people aware of the Dash project, and then when they are aware, you can move on to make them use it, but first you need to concentrate on that. We are going to start doing small campaigns in very targeted markets and channels, so we can measure before and after and see what works, what doesn't work, and grow from there to new markets and new channels. People who are in those markets and who use those channels will notice those campaigns. Those probably won't. But everything, so you can see where the money is being spent and what kind of work is being done.
And I believe, Fernando, the first of the actual marketing itself, after the branding exercise and key messages and all the market research we're doing, I think the first of those ads hit in the December timeframe. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're still on plan for that. So we'll be doing something by then. It's only going to be 3 smaller markets to test cheaply and efficiently. We'll disclose more details when we are a bit more advanced into the process. I'll post something in the next weeks with an update on the project.
Thank you, Fernando. Would it not be important to begin press releases and some sort of marketing by now?
Yeah, I think this just comes down to the proper order of doing things. I think we made it clear in the proposal, the roadmap that we would be following on the marketing front. Starts with branding, key design of different elements like the accompanying artwork, style guides for all of the different communication types that we will be pursuing, and then of course the copy itself, the creative copy. All of that needs to be created first, and it's being done professionally, which means it's being done on the basis of real-world research, consumer feedback, and all of that takes these professional teams time. If what we wanted to do was very quickly create an ad and get it posted to Google, key AdWords, we'd be done by now. But this is a much more extensive, professionally done. We're setting things up to be measurable. All of this, takes a bit more time than a simple design an ad and put it up. And so we're going to learn a great deal out of this, and by following the proper steps from a professional organization that does this for the largest corporations in the world, we know we're doing it right. And we get one chance to make a first impression out there in the marketplace, rather than scaling up marketing with an amateur, approach. We really need to take the time to get this right and get it right ahead of evolution. And so I think we're doing this at the appropriate time and using the appropriate process.
Thank you. Two questions from Rocksteady. Direct ramps to Dash are a pain point, especially for US citizens, and depending on what state you live in, your options are limited. Any new direct ramps to Dash in the pipeline?
The answer to this is yes. Expect news next month.
Any update on talks with a large US broker that was mentioned on prior call, maybe adding Dash in Q4? Is that still likely?
US broker with bank transfers both in the US and Europe is expected in the Q4.
Thanks. And last two questions to Ryan from Mark Mason. Do we have any updates on the 20,000 TV grade professional commercial that was Treasury funded from Dashcore's marketing and communication April proposal? Can you please tell us what the current status of commercial is, and will it ever be released for public viewing? And there is explanation that Ryan spoke very passionately about this commercial concept in the Dash forums in March and June.
So I'll provide an update here. We did spend a small portion of the funds for a storyboard. We initially storyboarded this just using simple tools like PowerPoint and so on to, have some basic visuals accompanying with sound to kind of lay out the what this would look like. We then took that to a professional graphics, like a video graphics designer, and had it converted into a much more robust storyboard. The plan was to take that to full professionalized version once we had kind of that ironed out and had shared it with everyday consumers to get their reaction to it and tweak it. We did make it pretty far along that process. And then over the summer was when we started to discuss the potential for rebranding. And the thought process was, why spend a lot of money on a commercial if we are going to go forward with this decision to do the rebranding? And we decided at that point in time that it would we'd be better served to put the project on hold, given we had no immediate plans to use it in a commercial setting. Then when we started engaging with Ogilvy, the direction was clearly, let's focus on online to start. And I take that advice very seriously. And so I think at this point, it is on hold. We've benefited from the work that has happened so far in terms of, the messaging that is resonating with people. We are planning on using the storyboards that we do have to share with Ogilvy when we start to get to the point where we're going to be doing video productions. And I'm sure that they will have tweaks to it, but it'll give some direction to them on things that we found to be effective and some of the key messages that from our side we believe are critical for the market. So I think that we will have a commercial available in the future. I think it's probably more into mid 2018 by the time we would launch it. In the meantime, we can either reallocate those funds towards other marketing related activities, or we can preserve them for a future point in time when we will go forward with the full commercial. I imagine that Ogilvy will be taking a lot of, they'll be providing us with a lot of direction on who they would recommend using. We may end up with a firm that costs significantly more than $20,000, given the status of our budget system. I would not be surprised if that wouldn't be a better direction to go, but none of the decisions have been made. So I think at this point, our marketing focus is around the Ogilvy effort, and we'll be using our funding in that direction. And I'm sure at some point in the future, a video similar to the one that was storyboarded will be released.
Okay, thanks. And 3 last questions from the chat. The first one from Richard Da Silva. Anyone from CORE able to comment if there is any plans to attend the North American Bitcoin Conference in January?
We haven't exclusively discussed it. I think Mo Levin just sent out the email to try to start to, just the email to literally everyone on his email list to say, hey, we're putting up tickets on the platform to be able to buy tickets to the North American Bitcoin Conference. So I think that entire conference is in the very early stages of planning. So we haven't really had any discussions with them or discussions internally as to whether or not we want to attend. I'd say that in the past, the North American Bitcoin Conference has been one of the better opportunities for us. Speaking personally, I think we should probably participate again this year. I think given the growing relationship that we have with Keynote Events and the growing influence that we have over the cryptocurrency space, that we'd continue to get a stage presence at the event and the opportunity to provide updates to an audience outside of the Dash community. So I think it's a good event for us, and we'd probably be smart to attend it again.
Thank you. Another question was about Daniel, but it was covered already. Is there a way Another question from MindHive. Is there a way to accelerate the development of Evolution by hiring more full-time developers or contracting on third-party firms? Maybe I will try to cover this one. First of all, we don't want to hire any external company to develop Evolution because the Evolution concept and documentation is our only competitive advantage at the moment. So we are considering only internal developers, the developers that will be included into the development process of Evolution, maybe with some small exceptions in terms of front-end development. And hiring more full-time developers will not definitely speed up or accelerate the development process. You cannot accelerate the process of developing software that would take 1 year with 10 developers by hiring another 10 developers and expecting that it will take a half a year. It doesn't work this way. So yes, we are going to hire some additional developers. We are going to hire supporting functions like QA, DevOps, to add some project management capacity to this, and I hope it will accelerate the process. But in terms of development, we have more or less optimal structures, and we believe that the team is very well set to develop the solution. What is also important is the fact that the expertise needed to work in Evolution development team is pretty unique on the market, and it's not so simple to find these people. This is only a kind of unique knowledge for what is needed, and also the entire recruitment and hiring process requires involvement of existing developers and existing resources, which kind of delays the process. However, yes, we are going to expand the team in different directions, but not necessarily by hiring more and more developers. We are focusing also on quality. We are focusing on processes and support of development teams.
I'd add one thing here. It's also there are certain aspects that you can outsource, and we're actively looking at those. Things like the front end and graphic design and certain aspects. But when you get under the hood, onboarding one of these outsourcing companies would be very difficult. It takes many months for developers, even if they're familiar with cryptocurrency, to understand what Evolution is, how it functions, how the different pieces work together, and start to become productive. We found that that process really, you can't expect a lot from the developers that we do hire for about 6 months. So to outsource that, you'd be paying for an outsourced firm for 6 months just to get up to speed. It's not. Those are the types of resources you want to own and be able to retain on your own project rather than outsource to somebody who's doing generic work for you. I just say that it's not, the majority of this work is not the type of work that is very amenable to outsourcing. This is very complex software. There aren't examples of it out in the wild that they can leverage. And so it's simply something that we're going to scale the team to the appropriate size that's needed to deliver against it. And there's still a couple roles we feel we need, but as Robert said, this is something that we really do need to own and have those resources around for the long term.
Thanks, Ryan. Next question from DJ Crypto. Is there a plan to compensate the donors that founded the initial foundation at the start of the project? Fernando, do you want to cover this?
Sure. We are looking into all options with the foundation. We created it when the treasury was not still even thought about, and we thought we would need that to fund development. After the Treasury system was launched, it was less important to keep the foundation, or the role was different because the Treasury could fund directly development. However, we still felt that we needed a legal entity that could provide us certain tools in the marketplace. But when we tried to fund it from the blockchain, we found a lot of legal difficulties to fund it and still be tax exempt, because foundations require certain things to be done in certain ways in order to keep that status. So we're looking into what we should do with it. It still has certain things going on, like the trademark process of the DAS brand, but we'll look into what we can do. In any case, regarding the contributions of people who became members, like many of us, when we launched it and asked for contributions, we made clear it was mostly for DAS development. We still have some funds because a lot was spent in that trademark process, the DAS brand. But I'm not sure what is legal to do. But should we decide to do something with foundation? We are looking into different options. We hope we can have some around that before the end of the year. Also, when we finalize the legal structure of the trust and the DAS Core group company that has been so discussed in this call, when we have everything solved, then we can see what still needs to be done, if that can be done by the foundation, and then we move from there.
Thanks, Fernando. Very last question from Jimbit. Do you have an updated timeline for a production release of Evolution? So at the moment, no, we don't have updated timeline for a production release of Evolution. We will redefine our roadmap after the workshops in Hong Kong. However, we don't want to declare the strict timeline for Evolution release. First of all, because it will be a process. Evolution will be released one step after another, and there will be a difficult to just define a single date of the release. And the other side of the equation is the fact that it is extremely difficult to estimate the effort for something that has never been delivered before. So we will be estimating our sprints, we will be estimating our releases one after another, but we rather hesitate to provide the strict timeline and the release date for the entire Evolution release, just because it's too easy to not meet the expectations. So we will be reporting on regular basis what is the progress, what kind of challenges are we facing, what kind of achievements did we make during the course of action, and the general roadmap should be updated after the Hong Kong workshops and will be released for public review after that. I guess that's all what we had on the list of Q&A. The other portion of these questions from the forum, I'm going to ask the other team members to provide answers during on the forum. So please expect some other team members reaching out and answering the questions for this. I would like to thank you for the participation. I would like to thank you for the good questions and good answers. And I wish you a very good day, night, evening. and good luck with fourth quarter of the year. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.